friends, welcome back to Food Prep Guide. As you can see, I have two different style of canners here. One is your traditional stovetop pressure canner, and the other is the more modern electric digital pressure canner. So today's video, I want to go over 5 safety checks that you need to know about when pressure canning. Some of these are going to be pre-canning checks, and others are going to be things that we need to be aware of kind of during the process of canning and even after the process of canning, pressure canning specifically. So let's get into it. Welcome to Food Prep Guide. My name is Jordan. I'm a homeschooling mom to 3, living on 3 beautiful acres with my wonderful husband. A health crisis forced our family to change the way we think about food. Unfortunately, it also put us in financial hardship. Thankfully, the solution to both challenges was the same: to live off the land as much as possible. For us, that means growing a garden, preserving the harvest, raising chickens, and cooking from scratch. It's definitely a family affair. And friends, too. Meet Stacy, researcher, author, and lifelong learner. She entered the world of food preservation in the crazy days of 2020. She joined a gleaning co-op, and a local grocer offered her clearance produce in bulk, and so the adventure began. Together, we're reclaiming the old ways of food stewardship and teaching them to the next generation. If there's one thing you should know about us, it's that we love Jesus and seek to steward his blessings wisely. Our table always has room for one more, so y'all come join us. Okay, I'm going to start with the number one, what may possibly be the most important pre-canning safety check that there is with pressure canners, and that is making sure that our vent pipe is completely clear of any debris. As we can and as we use a canner over a period of time, it is common for that vent pipe to kind of get gunked up with stuff, especially if you have any siphoning or anything like that going on. But also if you have your canner just sitting in storage and haven't used it for a couple months, especially like in the off season, in the winter right now, before we go to do a big canning session in the spring or summer, this is an incredibly important safety check. So in order to do this, what you need to be able to see is, you need to be able to see light, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. What I'm going to do to try to show you that is put the canner top in between me and my camera light right here, and bring the phone camera this way so that I can show you what that light needs to look like to make sure that the vent pipe is clear. Before I do that, let me show you what I mean by vent pipe in case you are brand new to pressure canning. Of course, anytime you're using any kind of gadget or device, you'll want to use your user manual to make sure that you're using your specific model properly. But all pressure canners have a vent pipe that's just going to look different between the different models. But basically, it's a metal piece sticking straight up, and that's our vent pipe. So here's what it looks like. I'm going to flip it over. Here it is. See? And we need to hold this up to the light, and you need to be able to see a very clear stream of light shining up through this hole. And let me show you what that looks like. Okay, I've got my canner lid held up to my light here, and this is what I'm talking about. You can see that this is completely unobstructed. We can see that bright camera light over there. When I'm not filming, I just hold it up to my ceiling light and make sure that I can see a nice clear stream of light through that. On the Presto digital canner is a little bit different, but the vent pipe is actually underneath your weight. So in order to do this pre-canning safety check, you'll need to remove that weight, and there is your vent pipe, and that's what we're going to be looking for the light. So again, this one's a little bit different because on the other side of the vent pipe is this little thingamajig right here, and it kind of blocks the light a little bit. But what you want to do is hold it up to the light and just kind of angle it a few ways until you're able to see that line of light. There it is. I can see through there, and I can see that that vent pipe is completely unobstructed. So this safety check is good to go. The reason that is so incredibly important is because if that vent pipe is obstructed in any way, you do run the risk of the pressure canner building up too much pressure because it can't let off any steam through that pipe when it's blocked. So before you ever can in a pressure canner, you want to check and make sure that your vent pipe is clear. The number 2 check has to do with locking the lid. Again, your user manual is going to tell you this, but I am a visual learner. I'm sure at least some of you out there are as well. So just a visual demonstration is kind of helpful, I think, and so I just wanted to share it with anyone who might be new to pressure canning. So when we are closing our lids, again, I've got 2 different styles here. The Presto Digital is pretty self-explanatory because it only goes on one way. And this knob right here, this handle, locks down and you're done. So that's very easy, very self-explanatory. The stovetop pressure canner to me is a little bit different because of how it doesn't have like this little safety arm thing that clamps down in only one direction. But this is the All-American 921 model. Presto has a lot of different stovetop canners as well that are good. I'm not 100% sure if they are going to latch down in the same way. But the reason why I wanted to bring this to your attention is because if you don't read your user manual carefully, it's very highly likely that you might attempt to screw down these little handles here one at a time. And that could be a safety issue because it can make this seal right here where the top seals down onto the canner and make it kind of catty-cornered. If one is tightened down tighter than the other one, and it can make it just kind of off kilter, and that can affect how your pressure canner is able to hold pressure. If there's any kind of little gap in that lid, it's not going to be able to build up the pressure needed in order to pressure can. So while the user instruction is very clear on this, again, just a visual demonstration, you want to grab, this is very heavy and I want to be very careful, but you want to grab knobs on the opposite ends and screw them down at the exact same time. And then just get 2 knobs at the other opposite ends and screw down at the same time. And do the same thing with the final 2. Opposite end handles and screw on, whoops, there we go, and screw on at the same time. And then even though I'm doing it the way that the user manual tells me to, I've still been getting down at eye level and looking at this gap. Let me show you. Now I do not have these screwed down all the way because like this is just demonstration, but this is the gap that I'm talking about between your lid and your canner. This style All-American canner is a metal on metal contact. The Presto canners have a gasket, and I'm not sure how that affects kind of this seal that I'm demonstrating here. But what you want to look for is that this gap is the same all the way around. It's very easy for there to be like a larger gap on one side than there is on the other. But if you screw them down opposite ends at the same time, you can help avoid that and get a nice even seal. The third safety tip is going to be when and how we open the canner after the pressure canning process has been taken place. So no matter what canner you use, you need to make sure that the pressure has gummed down completely to 0 before opening the lid. But not just waiting until it comes down to 0, but also removing the weight and then waiting approximately 3 or so minutes. You can go 5 minutes, it's not a big deal, before opening the lid. So pressure comes down to absolute 0, remove the weight, wait a few minutes, and then you can open your lid. Now that is kind of seems like a no-brainer, but on the digital Presto electric canner, there is a situation where it can be a little more kind of harder to tell when to open it safely. So the pressure, this screen will count down to 0. It will tell you done. It will light up and let you know here's the done check mark. That button will light up. Every now and then, the done button lights up as if it's saying, you know, it's done, before the vent pipe has dropped. Now it is in the dropped position right now. If I were canning, the vent pipe would be, not the vent pipe, but whatever that's called, it would be up here. It's a silver little stick that looks very similar to the vent pipe, and it would be pop up to here. And that's what actually this safety arm is for. because the manufacturer knows that sometimes the done button lights up before it has completely released pressure, and when this metal pipe is up, you physically cannot turn this handle. So there is that safety mechanism built into it. One of the things with pressure canning, at least for me when I was first learning, was the intimidation factor. It seemed like there was a lot of things that could go wrong, and it just kind of scared me away from it, to be completely honest with you. And I stuck with water bath canning for my first full year of canning because of that. And then I just bit the bullet and I was like, you know what, I'm not going to let this hold me back anymore. I'm going to learn everything I can about pressure canning safety, and let knowledge be overcome any kind of fears that I might have about it. But just know that the canners have safety features built into it. We need to know how to operate them safely, which is what our user manual is for. But again, when this vent pipe is up, even if your process says done, it will not let you move this and therefore open it. And that's the first step to opening this canner. But just wanted to let you know that sometimes it will say done, but you know that the pressure is completely to zero, because notice that this one has a gauge that tells you what your PSI is. The digital electric pressure canners do not, but that's what this pipe is right here. When it drops, wait a few minutes and it is down to zero. This dropping is essentially saying, okay, we're at 0 PSI, and then you can safely open it. Okay, check number 4, again, is such an easy thing. It's such a no-brainer thing, but I think because it is so easy, it's easy to forget. At least it is for me, and that is to make sure that you've got your rack in the bottom of the canner. I think one of the reasons why I have a hard time remembering sometimes is because when I'm water bath canning, I use my handle basket as my rack. It's, you know, it's a basket and it's got handles, and you can lift up your jars, set it on the edges of the canner, and lift your jars out safely. And the basket acts as the rack, so I don't have a separate rack that I put inside my water bath canner. And I think that's probably the culprit to why I sometimes forget this, but that's a recipe for disaster. Thankfully, I have never forgotten it completely. I have forgotten it to the point where I have loaded in my jars, but then before I actually started the canning process, I realized it and took the jars out and put the rack back in. Just in case you're brand new, the reason for this is that the glass jars cannot come into direct contact with that metal surface that then heats up to boiling, and even higher than boiling if it's under pressure, and they will shatter. So this is going to protect. It's got whatever rack you use has short little legs that just lifts the glass jars off of that direct heat source, so that they're not getting the brunt of that direct heat, you know, glass on metal contact. So whatever pressure canner you use, be sure to put your rack in it. The 5th and final safety check is going to be how you lift the lid off of your canner. Again, this is kind of like a common sense type thing, but again, visual demonstration has always been helpful to me, so I do want to pass that along. When you are opening your pressure canner, after it has come back down to 0 PSI, after you have removed your weight and waited a few minutes, it's time to open your pressure canner. And you want to essentially open it in the shield position. When you twist it and turn it to lift it open, you want to open it like you're using it as a shield. And that's going to protect your arm right here from all the steam that's going to immediately release from the pressure canner. It's the exact same thing with the digital electric pressure canner. Let's pretend I've just opened it. You see, yes. Let's pretend I've just opened it. I just want to open it in the shield position and not make sure I'm not opening it this way, so that that steam is burning my face or burning this arm right here. So I hope that was helpful to you. Just 5 quick safety checks when you are pressure canning, and we will be back with a lot more pressure canning type questions and tutorials and tips for you. I got the All-American 921 for Christmas, and I am so incredibly thankful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know who you are. But this is going to allow me to answer those questions that y'all have been sending in that I haven't been able to demonstrate because it's different on an electrical digital canner. So I think this would be a good video to drop any questions that you have about pressure canning, whether it be before you start the pressure canning process or anything about the pressure canning process, and I can be gathering those for a future Q&A pressure canning video that we can bring to you in the future. So go ahead and drop any questions that you have in the comments below, and we'll get that Q&A planned soon. That's all for today, and we'll see you next time. Bye.